Hello and welcome to Loopy Fun Part 1. You'll need Python Lister for this. Go into the iCloud folder and create a new file by tapping on the plus on the bottom left, calling it loopyfun.py, and away we go. I am going to give you a series of challenges. You have to write the code to complete the task. After I show you what your output needs to be, I'll ask you to pause this video so you can give it a go. After the pause icon, I'll show you how I did it. So if you get stuck or you need a hint, you can walk through my demonstration and get some inspiration. First challenge is an easy one. I want you to get the output numbers from 1 to 10. So pause the video now, write the code to do that, and I'll see you on the other side. Okay, so we're obviously going to need a loop. Something like, for num in range 10, print num. The trouble is, if you just put one number in the range bracket, it will start from 0 and go up to but not including that number. Instead, I can put 3 numbers in my range bracket, from, up to but not including, and the third number is the steps or the increments. So that will go from 1 up to but not including 11. Job done. Okay, the next challenge is to create a multiplication grid. That's all the times tables from 1 up to 10, going up to times 10. Pause the video now, give it a go. I'll see you on the other side. Okay, so we're going to need a loop in a loop. One loop goes across the rows and the other loop goes down the columns. Something like for times in range, 1, 11, 1, and inside that we'll have for table in range, 1, 11, 1. And then we'll print out the result of times table. The trouble with that is it'll print out the number each time it is generated. What we want to do is print out all the numbers on each row. We're going to need to create a string variable and append each number on a row to that string variable, and then we'll print it out after the whole row's been calculated. So you can see here, on each time we start a new row, we will create a new empty row string variable, and each time a number in that row is created, we will append it to that variable, and we'll print the entire thing out once the whole row has been done. Okay, well we're getting there. That's all the numbers, but the formatting's wrong. Each time we add a number to our row string variable, let's also add a tab to create nice, neat columns. Perfect. Challenge done. Okay, on to the next one. You need to produce this output with this formatting. You can see the pattern. 1 times 8 plus 1 is 9. 12 times 8 plus 2 is 98, etc. Pause the video, study the output carefully and give it a go. Right, well how do we begin this? Well, you can see going down the rows there's a number variable going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we can start off by making a loop to create that. For num in range 1, 10, 1. The next thing we need to worry about is the number on the left. 1, 12, 123, 1234, etc. We're going to need a loop to create that number, and we'll need to create an empty variable to store each digit as we put them in. Something like long num. Now to create a loop to create each digit. Something like for I in range, going from 1 up to our number in steps of 1. And we will append each digit to our long num number as a string, because it's far easier to combine string characters together. We can cast it back into an integer later. Right, let's see if our long num strings look good. Yes, they do. 1, 12, 123, 1234, etc. Except the bottom row should end with a 9, so we need to go one more. Let's put num plus 1 here. That's better. Okay, so we have our long num, we have our ordinary num. Let's put the whole thing together in a print line. Now, as I assemble this, I have to take care with my data types. Long num is a string, so I don't actually need to cast that as a string to print it out. I need to have times 8 as a string. Then I need to put my num integer cast into a string, and then an equals sign, and then the bit on the right hand side actually calculates what the answer is on the right hand side of the equals and casts it all into a string. What have I done here? Oh, I can't do maths with strings. I have to cast long num into an integer before we can use it in the equation. Right, let's run that. Ah, the digits look good. The formatting's wrong. Oh, and I'm missing a plus. It should be 1 times 8 plus 1. So I'll just add a plus here and run it. Ah, that looks much better. Okay, on to the formatting. The first line is going to need 9 extra spaces at the beginning. The second line is going to need 8 extra spaces. The third line 7. The fourth line 6 extra spaces. So we need an extra variable called gaps and a loop to put in the right number of spaces. Now remember, on the first row, when num is 1, we need 9 spaces. On the second row, when num is 2, we need 8. So 10 minus num will give us the number of spaces for each row. We'll add each space to the gaps variable, and we'll add the gaps variable to the print line. Job done. All this looping stuff isn't easy. Practice makes perfect. Let's do another one. Okay, we want this output here. Pause the video, give it a go, and I'll see you on the other side. So the first thing to say is that num is not going to go from 1 up, it's going to go from 9 down. So our loop is going to be something like, for num in range, 10 down to but not including 0 in steps of -1. Okay, let's print that out and see what we get. No, that's not right. We want to go from 9 down to 0. So let's change our parameters. From 9 down to but not including -1 in steps of -1. That's better. So now that we have our num variable working, we need to create each row's characters. So we'll have an empty string, long num, and we'll create a loop going from 0 up to our number, in other words, up to but not including 1 above the number, in increments of 1. And we will cast each of those digits into a string and append it to our long num variable. I'll just put in the colon I forgot and fix my indents and print the long num out and see if it works. It does. Those rows look perfect. Now on to the formatting. So the top row doesn't need any spaces added. The second row needs 1. The third row needs 2. So let's create a gap variable. And we'll have a loop for j in range. Now remember, the num variable is going 98765432110. So we need our j to go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we'll do 10 minus num here. It might work. We'll try it out and see if it looks good. So for each j, we will add a space to the gap variable and add the gap variable to the print line. Let's see what that looks like. It's almost perfect. It's right aligned like it's supposed to be, but there needs to be gaps between each digit. Well, that's not too hard. We'll just add a space each time we add a digit to the long num variable. Oh dear, that's turned it into a triangle. We need to add more spaces to the left-hand side of each column. Let me add an extra space here and see what that looks like. There we go, trial and error. We got it in the end. Okay, the next challenge is the output that looks like this. So you can see the bottom row goes 1 up to 9 and then back down to 1, making a pyramid. Study this output carefully, pause the video and give it a go. So hopefully by now your instinct will tell you need a num variable that goes from 1 up to 9. So we'll start off by creating that. Now if you look at our desired output, you will see that each digit of each row goes from 1 up to whatever number we're at, and then back down to 1. So we'll start off by for each row, we'll start off by creating our empty long num string. And for the left-hand side, we will go from 1 up to whatever number we're at. So from 1 up to but not including num plus 1. And we will append that digit to the long num string. Let's just see if that looks good. Okay, so that's the left-hand side of each row done. Now we need to go back down to 1. So I will create another loop for j in range. And this time we want to go from our number down to 1. So down to but not including 0 in steps of -1. and we'll append those digits to the long num variable. Close, but you'll see the numbers in the middle are repeated. The bottom row has 2 9s in it, for example. So we need to change our second loop so it starts from one below num. Good. So our bottom row is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now we need to worry about the spacing. So our desired output needs to have spaces between each digit. So I'll add a space when we add the character on the left-hand side, and a space when we add a character on the right-hand side. That looks good. And now we need to turn it into a pyramid by adding some spaces on the left-hand side of each column. So we will create our empty gap variable. Now I think on the first row we need to add 9 gaps. On the second row we need to add 8 gaps. On the third row we need to add 7 gaps. So as num goes up, the number of gaps goes down. So I'll try 10 minus num in the range parameter, and I will add the appropriate spaces to the gap variable and add that to the print line. This almost works, but it seems I need to add 2 spaces instead of 1. There we go. Okay, the last and most fiendishly challenging challenge of them all is to create the output that looks like this. So pause the video, have a think, and I'll see you on the other side. Right, where on earth do we start with this? Well, we've already got the top half from the previous challenge, so maybe if I just copy all of this code and paste it underneath, what does that look like? Well, the bottom half's almost perfect, except we need to flip it. So instead of num going up, we'll make num go down. Instead of 1 up to but not including 10, we'll have 9 down to but not including 0. Which is almost perfect, except we've got a double middle row. So we'll have 8 down to but not including 0. This concludes the first part of Loopy Fun. Hopefully you're getting to grips with how looping in Python works.